The pain ripped through me like a fire from the inside, sharp, unstoppable, merciless. My mother kept saying, "We're taking you to the hospital, sweetheart." But when the car stopped, her smile turned cold. My brother grabbed my arm and dragged me out into the middle of the empty road, ignoring my screams, and then threw my 5-year-old daughter out beside me. I begged, "Please, my baby, just take me to the hospital." But his foot slammed into my stomach. Then they drove away, leaving me and my little girl broken on that deserted road. But what happened next changed everything. Hey, before we dive in, tell me your city and what time it is where you are. I'm always amazed to see how many hearts connect across different places. My name is Talia Sanders, and I'm 33 years old. A week ago, my world stopped. My husband, Frank, the man who built our life with quiet determination and 6 bars of gold, died in a car crash on the way to a trading meeting. Even now, when the wind slips through the cracks of our house in Aurora, Colorado, it still feels like he's coming home, just running late. Frank wasn't wealthy by the world's standards, but he was steady. He believed in work, in preparation, and in me. I can still hear him teasing me at breakfast. Someday these bars will be worth more than all the fear in the world. I never thought about gold much, until the day I had to face a future without him. The funeral came 3 days after the accident. The sky hung low and gray, like it wanted to cry with me. Only my father, Alan, stood beside me. He held my hand through the service while my 5-year-old daughter, Lena, clung to my coat. My mother, Vera, and my brother, Peter, sent excuses. Too far to drive, they said. I knew better. They'd never accepted Frank because he didn't fit into their small definition of success. After the burial, when the mourners drifted away, a man approached us, tall, neatly dressed, carrying a leather folder. He removed his hat and said quietly, "Mrs. Sanders, my name is Avery Collins. I'm your husband's attorney. Frank left a will, and he wanted me to read it to you personally." We invited him to the house. I remember walking through the door, the smell of Frank's cologne still floating in the air. Avery sat at the dining room table, opened the folder, and began to read. His voice was calm, professional, until he reached Frank's own words, written in his familiar, careful handwriting. "If you're hearing this, Talia, I'm gone. This home is yours. Everything I built, every trade, every ounce of gold, I leave to you and our children. The 6 bars are in the basement safe, behind the second wooden panel, secured under your name. Keep them safe. They will keep you safe." I pressed my palm to my lips. The air in the room thickened with emotion, grief tangled with gratitude. Alan reached over, squeezing my shoulder. He really thought of everything, didn't he? I nodded through tears. Frank always planned for storms he hoped would never come. Avery continued reading. Bank accounts, insurance details, the title of the house, all legally transferred to me. He explained that Frank's trading license would expire within a month, but that I could renew it if I chose to continue the business. I barely heard the legal language. I was still stuck on he left me everything. When Avery finished, he handed me a small sealed envelope. He wrote this separately. Said you'd know when to open it. I slipped it into my pocket, too scared to face more emotions that day. After he left, Dad stayed for dinner. We ate quietly, soup, bread, the same simple meal Frank used to love on cold nights. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, respectful. Lena drew pictures at the table, small stick figures of Mommy, Daddy, and Baby, our unborn child. I was 8 months pregnant, moving slower every day, feeling Frank's absence in every heartbeat. Dad looked around the house and smiled softly. "You'll be all right here." He made sure of it. "I know," I said, though my voice cracked. "I just don't know how to do it without him." He sighed. "One day at a time. And remember, he trusted you with this life. That means you can handle it." When Dad left later that night, the house felt bigger than before, echoing with loneliness and love. I went down to the basement, flashlight in hand, and touched the wooden panel Frank had mentioned. My fingers trembled. Behind it, the small steel safe waited, silent and solid. I didn't open it, Just knowing it was there was enough for now. Upstairs, Lena was asleep on the couch, her small hand resting on my belly. I brushed a tear from her cheek and whispered, "He left us more than gold, sweetheart. He left us courage." I didn't know then that courage was the one thing I'd soon need the most, because the very secret Frank had trusted me with was about to destroy the fragile peace he'd left behind. The morning after the will was read, sunlight tried to break through the clouds over Aurora, but the house still felt heavy, like grief itself had settled into the walls. I spent the day sorting through Frank's things, his notebooks filled with gold market predictions, his trading receipts, the little calculator he never went anywhere without. Every object carried a trace of him, every page another reminder that he built a future I wasn't sure I could protect. That evening, my father stopped by again. He wanted to check on me and play with Lena, who was sitting on the floor stacking wooden blocks into a crooked tower. "She's got his patience," Dad said with a smile. Then, in that gentle, trusting way of his, he said, "Your mother will be relieved to know Frank took care of you. I'll tell her you and the baby are safe." I froze for a moment, unsure whether to stop him, but how could I ask my father not to speak kindly about me to his wife? I didn't know then that those few innocent words would unravel everything. The next day, I called him to say good morning, but it was my mother, Vera, who answered. Her tone was syrupy sweet, a tone I recognized from every childhood memory that came with a hidden sting. Well, she said, "so you're sitting on a fortune, aren't you?" I went cold. "Mom, please don't." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she interrupted. "Alan told me everything. A house, a will, and gold bars in the basement. My. Frank really did know how to make a girl lucky." "They're not just gold," I said quietly. "They're my husband's life savings. For the children." "Of course," she said, her voice dripping with fake understanding. "You just need a little help managing it all, don't you?" I hung up before she could say more. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped the phone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, feeling the baby shift inside me, the quiet ticking of the clock like a warning. I knew my mother. Once Vera wanted something, she didn't ask for it twice. She took it. 2 days later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. When I opened the door, there they were, Vera and Peter. Peter leaned against the hood of the car, arms crossed, wearing that lazy grin that always made me uneasy. "Surprise, sweetheart," Mom said, holding up a grocery bag. "We brought dinner." I hesitated. "Mom, I didn't ask you to come." "Don't be silly. We couldn't stay away. You're alone, pregnant, and you just buried your husband. You need family right now." Family. The word made me sick. They made themselves at home immediately. Peter switched on the television like he owned the place. Mom started unpacking groceries in my kitchen. She even took Frank's favorite mug from the cabinet and poured herself coffee. The smell made my stomach twist. That night, while putting Lena to bed, I overheard them in the living room. Their voices were hushed, but the venom carried. "She's too soft," Peter said. "She'll cave. We just have to stay long enough to get her to trust us." Mom replied, "Once she opens that safe, it's over. Alan said there are 6 bars. Imagine what that's worth." I pressed a hand to my mouth to stop myself from crying out. The next morning, my father came to visit. He looked tired, pale even. When he saw Vera and Peter lounging on the couch, his eyes darkened. "You two shouldn't be here," he said sharply. Vera rolled her eyes. "Alan, don't start. She needs us." "She needs peace," he snapped. Then he pulled me aside. "Don't tell them where the gold is. Don't trust them, Talia. Promise me." "I promise," I said, holding back tears. But later that night, the phone rang again. It was the hospital. My father had collapsed from a heart attack on his way home. By the time I arrived, it was over. I remember the cold brightness of the hospital corridor, the sound of the monitors still beeping even after they'd turned it off. I held his hand and whispered, "You were right about them. I should have listened." When I returned home, Vera was sitting in my living room, pretending to cry. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry."
"Poor Alan," she sighed.
Then she looked up at me with eyes that glimmered, not with grief, but with calculation. But don't you worry. We'll take care of everything now. I knew exactly what she meant. The following days passed in a fog of exhaustion and dread. Peter wandered through the house, pretending to fix things but always lingering near the basement door. Mom watched me constantly, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You shouldn't be alone down there," she'd say. "Why don't I handle the safe for you?" I wanted to scream, but the baby's weight inside me made every step, every breath, a struggle. I tried to focus on Lena, on keeping her safe. At night, I'd lock the bedroom door, clutch her close, and whisper stories about Frank, about how good people always protect what's right. But deep down, I could feel it. The storm my father warned me about had already begun. And soon, it would hit harder than I could imagine. The morning after my father's funeral, the world felt heavier than ever. The house in Aurora was silent except for the faint creaks of the floorboards beneath my feet. I could almost hear my dad's voice echoing in my head, "Don't trust them, Talia." But when I came downstairs, my worst fear had already taken form. 2 suitcases sat by the doorway. My mother, Vera, was unpacking groceries like she'd lived there all her life. Peter had his feet up on Frank's coffee table, flipping through TV channels with a remote in one hand and a half-eaten sandwich in the other. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharp despite the exhaustion in my body. Mom turned, pretending to be offended. "Oh, sweetheart, don't start with that tone. You're alone, pregnant, and heartbroken. We're your family. We're here to help." "Help," I repeated bitterly. "By moving in without asking me?" Peter grinned lazily. "You should be grateful, sis. Not everyone gets this kind of attention." My chest tightened. I wanted to shout, to throw them out, but I didn't have the strength. The baby's weight pulled at my back, my feet swollen from grief and stress. I just turned away and said quietly, "You can stay for a few days, but then you leave." Mom smiled, that too sweet smile I'd come to dread. "Of course, darling. Just until you get settled." But a few days turned into a week, and the house I once called my safe place became a trap. Every time I went downstairs, Peter was there, hovering near the basement door, pretending to fix something or look for tools. I caught him once with his hand pressed against the wall near the wooden panel where Frank's safe was hidden. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He jumped slightly, then smirked. "Just checking the wiring. You don't want the lights to go out, do you?" "Stay out of the basement, Peter," I warned. He shrugged, but his eyes said something else, something cold. Mom had her own ways of pushing boundaries. She'd go through drawers under the guise of organizing. She'd ask invasive questions during dinner. "So, honey," she'd say sweetly, "how much exactly did Frank leave you? Must be hard managing all that alone." I'd grip my fork and breathe through the anger. "It's none of your concern, Mom." "Oh, I'm just worried," she'd reply, her tone dropping lower. "You've never handled money before. You might make mistakes." "Mistakes like trusting you?" I snapped once. Her expression hardened. For the first time, she dropped the act. "Watch your mouth, young lady. You think you can stand on your own? Without your husband, you're nothing but a frightened girl with 2 children and no plan." The words cut deep, but I refused to let her see the wound. That night, I locked my bedroom door and sat beside Lena's bed. My daughter looked at me with wide, curious eyes. "Grandma doesn't like you, does she?" she asked softly. I forced a smile. "Sometimes people act mean when they're jealous, sweetheart." "Jealous of what?" "Of love," I whispered. 2 nights later, I woke up to the faint creak of floorboards. My heart pounded. I slipped out of bed quietly and cracked the door open. The hallway light glowed dimly. Downstairs, shadows moved near the basement door. "Peter." I could see him kneeling, working at something with a screwdriver. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Put that down." He froze, then slowly turned. "You should be sleeping." I said, "Put it down." He straightened, his smirk returning. "Relax. I'm just checking the lock. You can't be too careful these days. Someone might steal your precious gold." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Get out of my house, Peter. He laughed softly. This isn't just your house, Talia. We're family. Family shares everything. Before I could respond, my mother appeared behind him in her robe. What's going on here? She asked innocently. She caught me checking the safe, Peter said, grinning. Vera crossed her arms and looked at me like I was the problem. You're being paranoid again, dear. You're 8 months pregnant. Your hormones are everywhere. Maybe you need rest. Get out, I repeated. Vera's smile faded completely. Careful, Talia. You don't want to push away the only people who care about you. The next morning, I found her cleaning the kitchen like nothing had happened. She made pancakes for Lena, humming like a saint. The false sweetness in her voice made me sick. But later that day, everything changed. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my lower abdomen, the first contraction. It was early, but not unexpected. My breath caught. I called out, Mom, Peter, I think it's time. Vera rushed in instantly, her fake concern snapping back into place. Oh, darling, don't panic. We'll take you to the hospital. Peter, get the car. I hesitated. Something about her tone felt wrong. But another contraction hit, and I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my hospital bag and held Lena's tiny hand as Peter opened the car door. It's okay, sweetheart, I told her, trying to sound calm. We're going to the hospital to meet your baby brother. Peter started the engine. Mom sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I leaned back, breathing through the pain, unaware that this drive wouldn't take me to safety. It would take me to the darkest moment of my life. The car pulled away from my driveway just after 9. The night over Aurora was pitch black, the streets nearly empty, and every bump on the road seemed to echo inside my chest. I held one hand on my belly, the other gripping Lena's small fingers. She sat beside me in the back seat, wide-eyed and scared. Peter, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, take the highway. The hospital's 20 minutes from here. He didn't reply. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My mother sat in the front seat, silent, staring straight ahead. The first contraction hit hard. I winced, biting down on a cry. Please hurry. Vera turned slightly, her expression flat. Don't worry, sweetheart. We're almost there. But her tone didn't match her words. It was too calm, too rehearsed. Minutes passed. The bright city lights faded behind us, replaced by empty land and broken fences. I recognized none of it. My stomach clenched with more than pain. This isn't the way, I whispered. Peter finally spoke, his voice low and cold. We just need to talk first. Talk. I gasped. About what? I'm in labor. Mom's head turned toward me, her eyes glinting in the dark. About the gold, Talia. You know exactly what this is. The air vanished from my lungs. I stared at her reflection in the window, my own mother, calm as stone. You dragged me out here to rob me? Don't be dramatic, she said, almost amused. We're family. We're not taking it. We're securing it. You can't handle all that money alone. We'll manage it for you. Make sure it's safe. I felt another contraction twist through me, sharp and blinding. You're insane, I panted. Frank trusted me. I'll never. Before I could finish, Peter slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a stop on an empty stretch of highway lined with bare fields and darkness. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air. He turned around slowly, his jaw tight. You're going to tell us where the safe is, or this gets ugly. Lena whimpered. Uncle Peter, I'm scared. Shut her up, he barked. Don't you dare talk to her like that. I shouted. Vera's voice sliced through the tension. Enough. Peter, get her out. For a heartbeat, I thought I misheard. What did you say? Get her out of the car, she repeated quietly. If she won't cooperate, she can think about it here. Peter opened his door. Cold air rushed in. My instincts screamed run, but my body was too weak, my stomach too tight with pain. He yanked my door open, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out. I stumbled onto the gravel, clutching my belly. Peter, please, I cried. I'm 8 months pregnant. Please just take me to the hospital. He didn't look at me. He grabbed Lena next. No, I screamed as he pulled her from the seat. She cried, clutching her doll. Stop, I begged, reaching for her. But my mother's words cut through the night like a knife. Do it, Peter. She'll die out here, and we'll finally be free of her drama. The next thing I felt was the impact, a violent kick to my stomach. My knees buckled. I fell hard, my hands scraping against the asphalt. Pain exploded through my body. I screamed until my throat tore. Through my tears, I saw Peter's face, empty, cold, and my mother's hand resting on his shoulder like she was proud. Then the car door slammed, the engine roared, and they sped off into the darkness. Lena crawled toward me, sobbing. Mommy, wake up. Please, Mommy. I tried to reach her, but my body wouldn't move. The night blurred, my vision dimming at the edges. Somewhere in the distance, I heard an engine, another car. Headlights cut through the dark, slowing as they neared us. A woman's voice shouted, "Oh my God!" Footsteps pounded on the road. Then someone knelt beside me. "I'm a nurse," she said, breathless. "My name's Mira. Can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but only a weak gasp came out. She turned to Lena, who was clinging to my arm. "Sweetheart, it's okay. I'm going to help your mommy." Mira looked at my stomach, then back at the highway. "If I wait for an ambulance, she'll bleed out." Her voice trembled, but her hands were steady. She lifted me as gently as she could, helped Lena into the passenger seat, and laid me across the back seat of her car. As she drove, I drifted in and out of consciousness. The world tilted between light and dark. I remember hearing her on the phone. "This is Nurse Mira Reyes. I have a pregnant assault victim and a child, possible abdominal trauma. I'm heading to Aurora General. Alert the ER and send the police now." Every few seconds, she'd glance back at me and whisper, "Stay with me, honey. Just breathe." The pain was unbearable. I gripped the seatbelt, whispering Frank's name over and over. "Please don't let me die. Please, not like this." Myra's car raced through the empty roads until the lights of the city finally came into view. I could see the glowing red emergency sign through half-closed eyes. She shouted as she pulled up, "I need help out here." Hands reached in, pulling me onto a stretcher. Someone cut open my shirt. Someone shouted vitals. I could hear Lena crying. "That's my mommy. Please help my mommy." I tried to speak, to tell them about my mother and brother, about the betrayal, but everything faded into white. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was Myra's face leaning over me, whispering, "You're safe now. I promise, I won't let them get away with this." And for the first time that night, I believed her. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was silence. A soft, mechanical hum surrounded me, the steady rhythm of machines, the faint beeping of monitors. My throat was dry, and my body ached everywhere. Slowly, the blur of white walls came into focus. I was in a hospital bed. I turned my head weakly. Beside me sat Mira, the woman who had found me. Her nurse's badge still hung from her scrubs, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. When she noticed I was awake, she smiled with relief. "Hey, there you are," she said softly. "You scared me." My voice came out as a whisper. "My daughter, where's Lena?" Mira stood immediately and motioned to the door. A nurse entered with a small girl in her arms. "Mommy," Lena cried, running toward me. She climbed gently onto the bed, wrapping her arms around me. "They said you were sleeping." I was so scared. Tears filled my eyes. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "You were so brave." Mira placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You both are. But, Talia, there's more. You went into labor on the way here. We had to perform an emergency delivery." My breath caught. "My baby." Her smile grew tender. "He's here, alive and strong." She motioned toward the glass panel across the room. Through it, I saw a small bassinet where a nurse was gently rocking a tiny newborn boy wrapped in a blue blanket. His little chest rose and fell with the softest rhythm I'd ever seen. The tears came fast. "Can I hold him?" A nurse brought him to me. When they placed him in my arms, the world fell silent again. But this time, it was a peaceful kind of silence. His face was perfect. Tiny nose, soft lips, a faint wisp of dark hair. "Hi, Leo," I whispered. "You made it, sweetheart." For a few moments, all the pain, all the fear faded away. It was just me, my children, and a future Frank would have wanted me to fight for. But peace never lasted long in my world. Later that morning, a man in uniform stepped into the room. Officer Reed, as his badge read. His expression was calm, but serious. "Mrs. Sanders," he said gently, "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we need your statement as soon as possible. The nurse reported the assault, and we've opened a criminal investigation." I nodded weakly. Mira stood beside me as a silent witness. My voice trembled, but I told him everything, from the moment Vera and Peter forced themselves into my home, to the night they drove me into the dark, to the moment Peter's boot struck my stomach. I gave every detail, even the ones that tore my heart open. Officer Reed listened carefully, writing notes in his small black book. His jaw clenched when I described the kick. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "We've already started looking for them. I promise you, they won't get far." He looked at Leo, still sleeping in my arms. "You're lucky to be alive," he said softly. "And so is he." When he left, I broke down. Mira held me, whispering, "It's okay to cry now. You've been strong long enough." 3 days passed before the next call came. I was still in the hospital, recovering, when Officer Reed's voice came through the line.
"We found them," he said.
"Your mother and brother. They were hiding in an abandoned cabin about 30 miles from Aurora. We have them in custody." I couldn't speak for several seconds. My body trembled as relief and heartbreak collided. "Thank you," I finally whispered. "They'll be charged with aggravated assault, attempted homicide, and child endangerment," he continued. "You won't have to face them right now. Focus on healing. We'll handle the rest." After the call, I sat in silence, staring at Leo in my arms. He yawned softly, curling his tiny fingers around mine. Lena climbed onto the bed beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Mommy, are the bad people gone?" "Yes, baby," I said softly. "They can't hurt us anymore." That night, as the rain tapped gently against the hospital window, Mira came to check on us. She brought a small cup of warm tea, and a look that could only come from someone who'd seen too much pain but still believed in hope. "I don't think I ever told you," she said quietly, "I lost someone too. Years ago. I was driving home from work, an accident, just like your husband. But I didn't make it in time. That's why I couldn't leave you there. I couldn't lose another person to the road." Tears welled in my eyes again. "You saved my life," I whispered. "And my children's." She shook her head.
"No, Talia.
You saved your own. You just needed someone to remind you that you could." Her words stayed with me long after she left. A week later, I was discharged. The doctor said my body was healing well, though I'd need rest for several weeks. Mira insisted on driving me home herself. As her car pulled into the driveway, I froze. The house stood exactly as I'd left it, but it no longer felt haunted. It felt reclaimed. Mira helped me inside, settling Leo in his crib and Lena on the couch with a blanket. Before leaving, she turned to me and said, "If you ever need a friend, I'm not far. And when you're ready, I think you should finish what Frank started." I nodded slowly, feeling that spark of strength return. That evening, I called Officer Reed again. "I want to press full charges," I said firmly. "For every lie, every injury, every moment they tried to take my life." He didn't hesitate. "I'll make sure justice is served." After I hung up, I walked to the basement, opened the wooden panel, and looked at the small steel safe. My reflection stared back from its surface, tired, bruised, but unbroken. Inside were 6 gold bars, stacked neatly, gleaming under the flashlight. Frank's handwriting was taped to the inside of the door, "For Talia and the children for tomorrow." I smiled through my tears. Tomorrow had finally come. 2 months later, the trial finally began. By then, my body had healed, but my heart still carried invisible bruises. I sat in my living room with Officer Reed beside me, The court connected through a secure video link. I couldn't bring Lena or Leo to court, so this was the only way I could face the people who had nearly destroyed my life, my own mother and brother. On the screen, Vera and Peter sat at the defense table, looking small against the polished wood and harsh lights of the courtroom. Judge Miller presided, calm and unreadable. When the session started, I could barely breathe. The prosecutor began, his tone firm. Your Honor, this is a case of deliberate cruelty. The defendants assaulted a pregnant woman, their own family, leaving her for dead on an empty road. Only by chance, she and her children survived. Every word hit like a hammer. My mother didn't look at the camera once. Peter fidgeted, jaw tight. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook at first, but then steadied. Your Honor, I don't hate them. I just can't understand them. They took my husband's kindness and turned it into greed. They tried to take my life and my children's future. I forgive them, but I want justice, not only for me, but for every woman who has ever been told her pain doesn't matter. The courtroom was silent. Judge Miller nodded.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders.
Your strength honors your husband's memory. After a long pause, the verdict was delivered. Vera Sanders and Peter Sanders, this court finds you guilty of aggravated assault and attempted homicide. You are each sentenced to 10 years in Colorado State Prison, with no parole for the first 5. My chest loosened for the first time in months. On the screen, my mother's face froze in disbelief. Peter stared at the floor. But for me, it was over. Later that evening, I stood in the backyard of my home in Aurora, holding Leo in my arms as the sun went down. Mira sat beside Lena on the porch, helping her blow bubbles that shimmered in the golden light. For the first time, the air felt light again. No tension, no fear, no ghosts left hiding in the corners. I whispered into the breeze. We made it, Frank. Justice was done. The wind carried the words away, like a promise. My husband's memory was safe, my children were safe, and I finally was too. The dawn that followed wasn't just the start of a new day. It was the beginning of the life I fought so hard to protect. Spring came early that year in Aurora, Colorado. The snow melted faster than usual, and with it, the shadows that had once filled my home finally seemed to fade away. The air smelled of wet earth and blooming flowers, of new beginnings. 6 months had passed since the verdict, and the rhythm of life had settled into something peaceful, something real. Each morning began with Lena tiptoeing into my room just as the sun peeked through the blinds. Mommy, wake up. It's a beautiful day, she'd say, tugging at my hand until I smiled. Downstairs, Leo would already be awake, babbling from his crib as if greeting the world. Our house no longer felt like a place of loss. It felt like a home again. The same rooms that once held grief now echoed with laughter. The same basement that once hid secrets now symbolized hope. I reopened Aurora Bullion Traders, the business my husband, Frank, had built from scratch. I started small, a few trusted clients, small trades, cautious steps. But every time I placed an order or sealed a deal, I felt closer to him. His framed photo sat on my desk, next to his old trading notebook, the pages worn but full of wisdom. It reminded me that his dream didn't end with his death. It lived on through me. Mira visited almost every weekend. She became more than a friend. She became family. Sometimes she'd bring homemade pie or paperwork from her hospital, insisting she was just dropping by. But I knew why she really came, to make sure I was still smiling. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Rocky Mountains, she sat beside me on the porch and said, "You know, Talia, I think you've turned pain into something golden." I laughed softly. I guess Frank was right. Gold never loses its shine. It just changes form. She smiled. Neither do strong women. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I went down to the basement. The safe still stood against the far wall, solid, unshaken. I turned the key and opened it slowly. The 6 gold bars gleamed in the dim light, untouched since Frank's death. For a long moment, I just stared at them. These bars had been the reason for so much pain, And yet, in a strange way, they had also become the reason for my survival. They weren't just wealth anymore. They were symbols of endurance, of everything we'd fought through. I whispered, "You can rest now, Frank. I finally understand what you were trying to build." It was never about the gold. It was about security, love, and legacy. The next morning, Lena ran into the kitchen holding a tiny plaque she had made at school. It was painted in bright yellow with glitter on the edges. In her messy handwriting, it said, "For Mommy, because you are the strongest person I know." I hugged her so tightly that she giggled. Leo clapped his tiny hands, and Mira, watching from the doorway, wiped a tear from her cheek. That afternoon, as we sat in the garden, the sun broke through the clouds, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. For a moment, time stood still. Lena's laughter, Leo's sleepy eyes, Myra's quiet smile. It all felt perfect. I looked toward the sky and whispered, "We made it, Frank. The darkness is gone." And as the light touched my face, I realized something. The true gold wasn't in the safe, or the bars, or even the business. It was in the life we'd rebuilt, the peace we'd found, and the love that had survived everything. For the first time in a long time, Aurora felt like its name again. A new dawn, a new light. Thank you for watching this story. If Talia's journey moved you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know which part touched your heart the most. Your support helps me bring more real and powerful stories like this one to life. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for the next story.